Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the show. We have Lee Brevard, a jewelry designer, with us today. When I was in Cairo recently, I stayed at the Semiramis Intercontinental Hotel. The manager suggested I talk to the authority on everything Egyptian. So here's the profile on Cairo-born Shihira Mehrez. Here, hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and I'm with Shihira Mehrez in Cairo. I'm still in Cairo. I love it here. I just came across the Lion Bridge over the Nile, and I came to visit Shihira, who was born in Cairo. She's a folklorist, and she's an expert on the national costumes of Egypt. So let's talk about these costumes. Welcome, Shihira.
Hello.
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
You are through and through Egyptian.
Yes, yes. In as much as it exists.
Is that
because, we were a kind of meeting point of all cultures. So we have a bit of everything in us.
Tell us where we are exactly. I know the Intercontinental's across the Nile. Where am I? What
Yes,
area?
we are on Giza, actually. Remember Giza pyramids?
Yes.
So we are in the beginning of the governorate of Giza. And we're not too far from the Pyramids Road. And we are just then across two bridges from where your hotel lies.
And what area?
It is called, this particular area is called Doki, but it's Giza. I mean, the area is called Doki, but the whole, if you want to governorate, is called Giza.
Let's talk about the clothes, because you're a curator. You've done exhibitions all over the United States and in Europe as well. And how did you get interested?
Well, I have to tell you that I started collecting when I was very young. I was maybe 16 years old, and this is how I got my first dress. And in the beginning, I used to buy only the dress I could wear. I was much slimmer, so I could wear almost anything. But I was only selecting jewelry and costumes that were wearable. Then, you know how it is with age, you grow wiser and wiser. So I decided that one time, shortly after I reached 20, that I wanted to be my collection to be more representative of what there was in Egypt. So I started being more systematic. Also, at the time, I changed from my chemistry studies. I had a
Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
Yes.
You have a bachelor's in chemistry. How did that lead to this?
I wanted to become Madame Curie. And I didn't become Madame Curie. No, I was also part of, the generation of the revolution in Egypt, and we had hopes of, transforming Egypt, making it a modern country. I thought that doing studies in chemistry was much more serious than doing what usually young ladies of my background do, which is French literature, English literature.
The arts.
The arts, yes.
The arts, the right side of your brain.
Exactly. Doing chemistry was going to set me off as a kind of independent woman of the late 20th century.
So you actually did all of your studies in French as well, didn't you?
I first started in French, and then I went to the American University in Cairo, where I did this BSc in chemistry. Then I shifted after I finished my BSc because, as I told you, I went beyond the fact that I wanted to prove myself. And I decided at the time that I wanted to know more about my roots. Like many of my generation who wrote about in Western schools, either French or English schools, and there was very little of our own background that we knew.
I see.
So I decided to start studies in Islamic art and architecture because I wanted to know more about my own culture.
And then that led to the costumes.
Then I went up to almost a DPhil, a doctorate in Oxford in Islamic art and architecture. But at that point, I felt terribly alienated. I felt that it is true that we need to learn from the histories of the past, but I personally needed to deal with something living. And Islamic architecture, as you have noticed, is something of the past.
Yes. And this what I'm wearing today, what you're wearing, is still a part of living history.
It is dying out, but we have the last rays of the setting sun, you know, so there are areas where people still do this embroidery. What you're wearing particularly is a Northern Sinai embroidery, and it's a cross-stitch embroidery which is worn on dresses, like this one here and like that, the one there. And we
so
make
it doesn't matter what color it is. It can be in all different
Traditionally,
colors.
it was on dark colors, either black or navy blue. It's a dress which was very much influenced by the Palestinian costume because of the vicinity of Northern Sinai to Palestine. And with time, the Egyptian characteristics have been brought about. Like this blue theme, this blue color, is typical of Egypt. It's not found in Palestine.
I see. And then what? And underneath?
Underneath, you're wearing a shawl from Siwa. Siwa is an oasis on the other side. I mean, Sinai is on the eastern frontier of Egypt, and Siwa is on the western frontier of Egypt, close to Libya.
And Siwa is an oasis.
Siwa is an oasis which has inhabited by a different ethnic group. They are partly Berber and partly of African origin. They have a language of their own, but it's not written, it's oral.
One thing I've heard so much since I've been in Egypt, all over Egypt, is oasis, oasis. What is that?
Well, oases are areas in the desert where water is available. There's a spring, and then around the spring, the green starts to grow. And most of our land in Egypt, as you know, is a desert. We have the Nile Valley, which is very narrow. And about, I don't know, maybe 9/10 out of the land of Egypt is desert. But it's good land. Once there's water, it becomes extremely good agrarian land.
But you go over a lot of desert before you come to an oasis.
Exactly.
Is that it?
Yes.
And then this is from Siwa?
This is from the oasis of Siwa. They have very beautiful dresses. Also the dress that we have behind us, yes. It's also a bridal dress. It's not the wedding dress because we get married in colorful costumes. We don't get married in white like in the West, at least traditionally. Now we wear a white dress like in the West.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is there a difference in the style of a married woman and a single woman?
Yes, there is, and particularly in Siwa. This is the dress that the bride wears on the third day after her wedding when her parents come to visit her in her new house. So she wears this white dress. And there's a black equivalent of this dress, which is worn as a formal dress for all important events of the year after the wedding.
So this type of embroidery on this scarf is really coincides with the type of embroidery on
Yes,
here.
it's exactly the same kind of embroidery.
But on different types of fabric. I'm on this is
This
silk,
is kind of rayon.
a rayon.
Yes, and this is cotton.
Mixed. Now, do all the costumes take a traditional form? Is there
Yes, the T-shape, very much close to this shape. This is a very Egyptian shape. It's a very square T-shaped costume with usually very wide sleeves and not fitted to the body. It's a white gown.
How did that come about? Is that a certain...
Well, I think it is reminiscent of the Coptic costumes. You know, the Coptic Egypt is Christian Egypt. Egypt became Christian by the 4th century AD. It became officially Christian, but before this, Christianity had spread very, very soon because Egypt has been evangelized by St. Marcus, so it's an evangelical country. And the Coptic costume is very close to this, and it's probably reminiscent of the pharaonic costumes also.
This reminds me of the pharaohs.
Exactly.
But even the color, is that what the color be?
Well, of course, the Egyptian pharaohs used to wear linen. They famous for white linen.
Yeah, so that would
cotton
be...
is a newborn tradition. It's only 300 years old in Egypt, while linen is 7,000 years old. But you don't do it anymore.
Tell me about what you're wearing.
Well, I'm wearing, again, we do traditional costumes as this one, or we buy them, or we order them, but we also specialize in dresses and costumes which are inspired from the traditional, which are contemporary, like this shawl I'm wearing, like the coat you're wearing.
This is contemporary,
it is
but
contemporary.
inspired.
It is inspired. The embroidery is very traditional, but it is made on something that can be worn as a wrap over modern costumes.
And this is something different too.
This is a traditional dress. It's a traditional dress of Northern Sinai.
So it'd be the same kind of...
It's the same kind of embroidery as this one. But
and the Sinai's on the Red Sea. Is that
Sinai
right?
is a peninsula. It has the northern part is on the Mediterranean Sea,
right,
and then it is pointed, and both points are on the Red Sea.
I see.
And it's a very, very beautiful place.
Does the water influence, is there an influence from that in that area?
Not the water, but as I say, it was a crossing point. Sinai has been the place where you meet influences coming from Arabia, the Arabic Peninsula, from Palestine, from Iraq, from Persia, from India. So Sinai was really the crossing point of Egypt.
We have something different.
Yes, this is the peasant dress of the Delta. They wear more either printed frocks like this one, or sometimes plain black dresses with a kind of more fitted shape. You see, the shape that you have in here is not as wide as this
So
one.
what is the Delta area?
The Delta area is the area starting with Cairo and as the head of a triangle, the summit of an inverted triangle, and then growing up, and the base of the triangle is on the Mediterranean Sea.
And that's the Delta?
This is the Delta. It is coming from the Greek word, delta, which is the letter D in the Greek, and it is usually land which has been formed by the two branches of the Nile. Around the two branches of the Nile, the deposit of silt by the two branches of the Nile, what created this part, which is very, very fertile.
So very fertile.
Very
fertile. Now, they don't all wear peasant clothes there. They must have a different type of...
Well, each area in Egypt has a different kind of costume. Usually the dresses of the Delta are fitted dresses. They're not the wide shape that we've seen. And each area has a different kind of ornamentation for the dress. So
what are the ornamentations? Let's
you can use beading. I don't know if you have any dresses with the beading
right over
in
here, the black one.
There's one dress using, two dresses here using beading, or inserts of velvet, or the use of machine embroidery, like the one at the end, or the use of simple, how do you call them, frills, or little pipings and pleats.
Would all ages wear these, or do you have to be a certain age to wear certain things?
Well, now it is a disappearing tradition. So it's only older women, and women are old in Egypt at 30.
Is that right?
Yes, because girls still marry very young, and by 30 you already have growing up children, and you're already part of the mature generation.
Oh boy, at 30, what would we do? They couldn't do away with us this soon. Are there certain things about keeping the head covered?
The head is always covered, and there's different head covers depending on the area where you are. Some are bonnets with little coins on, the one that they wear in Northern Sinai, and see where they wear the short that you have.
They wear this on the head?
Yes, on the head. It's like a, yes, I can show you how it's worn. It's not that easy to remove it.
No, but I've got my...
This is how it would be worn.
Then they pull, just drop
Yeah,
down.
of course it will be tied up, because also they braid the hair. They don't keep the hair as it is. They make 100 different braids on top of the head, and this helps.
And it holds it. It holds it in place.
You know, like the African headgear dresses with lots of tiny braids. So the hair is all tiny, braided in tiny braids, and it helps keeping the head covered.
You've been here for so long, and you're so knowledgeable about all of this. You must have a favorite area or a favorite something. Like this turned out to be my favorite today.
My favorites are the dresses of Upper Egypt, which are very, very good.
Now, Upper Egypt is not Upper Egypt on the map. It's down below.
Exactly. Upper Egypt is going up the Nile, to the roots of the Nile, to the sources of the Nile. So this is why we call it Upper Egypt.
Yes,
and we call it the Delta Lower Egypt.
And that's up on top of our map.
It's on the north. Yes.
So what is especially great about that?
Well, they have very beautiful, it's very simple black dresses, but they have metal stitching. And they're very, very luscious. They look extremely sophisticated. And they're very particular to Egypt also.
Do you think that the women of the pharaonic period wore those?
Well, no. It is difficult to say. I'm sure they were not wearing black. They were wearing white.
Oh, they were always wearing white.
Because if you remember all the reliefs of the pharaohs, you always feel that it's a very thin material, see-through material, pleated usually, and very, very, very high quality. It was not as thick and it was not as wide as what we have now.
I hate to say goodbye to Shihira Mehrez. We're in her shop. I also want her to tell us just a little bit about her shop before we leave.
Well, the shop, as I say, started very amateurish like. We started about 12 years ago and we were selling one day in the afternoon. And it has grown. And now we are a regular shop. But for 2 or 3 years, we were only selling in the afternoons. It was very amateurish.
Well, we're so happy that we were here with you, and we want to thank you so much. You've been so interesting. And we have to keep talking about Cairo. It's so fabulous. Thanks for watching this segment. Cairo was fabulous, and I bought these shoes. They're handmade in El Arish, and I bought them from Shihira's shop, and that wonderful scarf that I loved so much. So that tells you how great Cairo was. We'll be right back with Lee Brevard, so don't go away. He's a terrific jewelry designer. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back. They call Lee Brevard the jeweler to the stars, and if you stay tuned, you'll see why. But I knew Lee way back when he was a painter, and a very good one at that. He grew up in Pittsburgh, studied music at the Carnegie Mellon, and art at Arizona State. Then Lee moved to New York to paint. How did you do there, Lee?
I did pretty well.
Were you painting, only painting?
Well, I went to Cooper Union.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I went to Cooper Union. I got in there, and that's kind of the thing that made me decide to become an artist and be serious, because they train you not to be an art teacher or a commercial artist. They're really to produce sculptors, photographers, painters, so forth. And then I started showing, and I started selling a little bit, and then I moved to Paris.
And then why and how did you get to Paris? Because that's a pretty interesting part of your career.
Well, I met this diplomat I became very good friends with.
I remember this story now.
Yeah.
And he was like a patron.
He was my patron, and he said that, you know, he had a very big place there, and if I wanted to go over, I was welcome to go. So I went, thinking I was just going to go back to New York. I kept my apartment in New York, and I wound up living there. And eventually I became an expatriate, and I started showing in really good galleries there, and I started getting a good following.
How long were you in Paris?
5 years.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, 5 years.
I think when I met you, you were in San Francisco. I was working for Andy Warhol's for Interview, and I don't know, I remember seeing you on the streets in San Francisco. Did you ever live there?
No, but I went up there a lot.
And you were painting cows, I remember.
Painting cows and other animals and parrots.
And parrots and
palm trees.
Were you?
Yeah.
Well, one thing, I don't know what happened after that in your life, but I know we came back together again when I was West Coast editor of Interview, and we talked a lot about jewels. And you knew that Andy was really interested in jewelry. So I think that opened a door for you.
In a kind of a way, maybe, because I always liked jewelry. And Andy liked it, and I became friendly with Andy, mostly through Paris, because William Burke, do you know William from Sonnabend Gallery? He had the keys for Andy's apartment, and he took care of Andy's business, his commissioned portraits in Paris.
And the Cherche Midi, that beautiful apartment.
Yes. And so William and I used to be at Andy's place when Andy wasn't there, even.
So that was a good little place.
Yes, quite a nice little place,
yeah,
big
it was
place.
Beautifully done, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that was kind of just a lead-in from the back door, you might say, from the French door.
Yeah, and then I guess the sophistication of the people in Paris and the way they wore jewelry. I mean, André Putman was the first woman to show up at my house wearing real jewels, and she was wearing sapphire and diamond bracelets and some kind of neck, just what for me now is plain jewelry, but with precious stones. And she showed up at my place, and I was kind of knocked out. I thought, oh, look, here's a woman wearing jewels to my house. So it was a little foreign to me at that time.
Was she decorating at the time?
She was making the furniture.
Oh, she was just making furniture, because she became she is very well known.
Yeah, no, I think it was before her decoration. She had this, have you ever been in her apartment?
No, I haven't. Is it great?
She's right on the quay, right in the 6th arrondissement, and she's just like 6 doors in, and then she's got an old apartment, the old style, you know, like the 18th century style. And then as you walk through the rooms, eventually you go through one little tiny door and you walk into this giant modern thing.
Oh, right.
It's like a whole building. And that's where all her furniture was, and you could keep going until you got to the roof, and there was a greenhouse and gardens and stuff.
So do you think that was a big influence, having her wear real jewels to your house?
No, Andre, that made an impression on me.
That was actually before I met you.
Yes.
Because I know we used to talk about jewels all the time, and then I know what came after that, these photographs that you were taking and doing. Yeah,
I was doing photographs, I was doing portraits, and then I guess partially because of you, because you had all the jewels all the time, I had done that portrait of you laying on the floor because I was doing all these people on the floor. David Hockney on the floor. Remember, everybody was on the floor.
It was a great series. Lay down on the floor and I'll take your picture.
Because you didn't know if they were dead or sleeping or why or what.
In the kitchen, I know. You took them in all different places. But the one you did of me, you kind of sprinkled.
Well, I started putting some gems on the rings on your fingers in the painting.
Right.
And at that time, that gave me the idea to do this series of paintings with gems on, like
this one,
like
because
that one.
I think this painting is probably a lead-in to that.
Oh, this is definitely pivotal because in that they're all green rhinestones, except there's one real emerald there in that painting.
So we have to find the real emerald.
It's pretty
it's
easy.
Right here.
Yeah.
I knew exactly where to go. The real emerald. But I think the title is fabulous. Emerald Bay by Lee Brevard, 1981. And I think you started taking those on the floor paintings even earlier than that, in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah, those were before.
And then who did you start, after your jewel paintings, then you started actually making jewelry and selling them to your friends, I think.
Well, what happened is, not this emerald, but shortly afterwards, I bought an emerald and made myself a ring, just a very kind of poor emerald. And I went to a gem show and I met an emerald dealer who was going to Colombia every month and bringing back emeralds and selling to wholesalers. So I started doing business with him. Within the first week, I sold a 7-carat emerald. I tripled what he was asking, and people were still getting it wholesale. And so then I started selling stone after stone, because I come over to the west side with these stones, and I would call up and say, "You want to see emeralds?" And they go, "Yeah." It's not like calling and saying you want to see a painting. Well, that's like, pulling teeth.
But you were also calling your friends, weren't you? And
yeah. Well, I had a lot of wealthy friends. You have to if you're an artist.
Right. So this is a change. Were you still painting at the same time?
I was still painting, but then eventually it became so lucrative selling the emeralds, I just couldn't afford to paint anymore.
Oh dear! And so here we have you, Lee Brevard, jeweler to the stars.
Well, here, let me tell you.
How did that start?
No, let me tell you.
Okay.
When this painting, in this series, it was written about in Vogue magazine. It was a foreign issue. It was either English or Australian. I went onto the newsstand. I thought it was going to be in. I flipped through the page. I saw my name in Vogue and some writing about me. The first time I'm written about in Vogue. I had $7 in my pocket. I had $7 to my name. The issue was $4.50. It was either buy the issue or buy spaghetti. And I couldn't afford to buy the magazine, and I thought, what's wrong with this picture? Here I'm in Vogue magazine about my painting, and I can't afford to even buy a magazine talking about me.
I remember reading that, and I remember Jill Spalding wrote it, and it was in Australian Vogue, because Jill and I had talked about it, and she said, I want to meet Lee Brevard because I've heard it, because I was talking about your jewelry all the time too, and your paintings, and she wrote a really nice article about moving from paintings to jewelry. Now, don't get away from the Hollywood connection, because I want to talk about that.
Right.
So after the Vogue thing, then your name kind of caught on.
Well, I started selling emeralds. They sell castings, just findings that you put stones into, and I didn't like them. I didn't like the way they looked. They weren't heavy enough metal. The design was wrong. They were too fussy, and I thought, I'm just going to make them myself. So I just taught myself how to carve wax and how to make jewelry.
Oh, so then you were setting your stones, doing everything together.
I didn't set the stones, but I carved the waxes. First I did the drawings, and somebody else carved the wax. Then I learned how to carve it, because I was too frustrated making a drawing. I wanted to create it myself. So I learned how to carve wax, And then I started working with a jeweler. I got successful, and I could afford having a jeweler in my office, and I learned from him. And then my business became a design business rather than a stone-selling business.
All right. And then Hollywood,
Then I moved to Beverly Hills because people wouldn't go downtown to the wholesale market.
Yes.
And then, you know, I started making things for people at Christmas or just now and then for special stuff. And then in '85, Waldo Fernandez started seeing Elizabeth Taylor. And I had been making things for Waldo's clients at Christmas.
Waldo Fernandez is a very successful interior designer, just for our audience to know. And so he wanted to give Elizabeth a gift.
A gift. and he knew what she liked.
Uh-huh.
And so he had an idea for something, but I really didn't think it was the right idea because I thought he wanted a stone on a chain, something like what Paloma Picasso was doing at the time, but she has bigger diamonds and rubies and emeralds than what the budget was for a topaz or a citrine.
Uh-huh.
And I said, really, she'll probably just give it to her maid. Let me, why don't you just let me make something exciting for her?
Uh-huh.
So what I did is I took things out of my inventory, I spent my own money, I went way over budget, I was 10 times over the budget, but I thought, how many chances will I have to make jewelry for Elizabeth Taylor?
Right.
I'd like to get her really excited.
Right.
So I thought either she's going to hate this or she's going to love it. And it turned out she flipped, she loved it, she wore it everywhere. Everybody was telling me, like Sheldon Adelson, you remember, he would say, oh, Elizabeth wears it. Everybody said Elizabeth wears it. And then 2 months later, she called up to get me to make her earrings, and I've been making her jewelry ever since.
And you've gone on from that time, because our time is coming to an end. I don't know where it went. We've been talking for so long. But you started making things that you can see at Neiman Marcus. And if you don't see it here, or if you like something, do you do special orders from Neiman, or?
No, I don't. I can't anymore because my business with Neiman's is too big. There's too much demand.
So you, whatever they see in the showcase they can get, all of these are one of a kind?
What here I have is one of a kind. When I do the trunk shows and go around the country to the different stores, I take the one of a kind pieces. So the people that show up at those shows can get the one of a kinds. Or old friends are allowed to come to the studio, or sometimes like a movie, because they have my jewelry in a lot of movies and TV, they get to come.
We have to finish, but let's say Madonna, Sharon Stone, Elizabeth Taylor, who else?
Farrah
Fawcett.
pierced her ears to wear my jewelry.
And this isn't my favorite. I want to get a close-up on, because this cross I knew from the very beginning. This is my favorite cross, all tourmalines. So
Flawless.
Flawless. Come back again and bring your jewelry. Thanks, Lee.
Okay.
And we'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles.